movie wars.
Just start.
Ladies and gentlemen, Drew has got something stuck in his craw.
That's why you guys replaced me with Marianne.
Yeah.
The intros like that where I tried to drink all my coffee beforehand.
We were going to intro the show, and Drew had never heard the phrase "get stuck in my craw." It's an old phrase if you haven't heard it. And then we start the podcast, and something got stuck in his throat craw.
Yeah.
And whatever a craw is, it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
I think the reason that's an old phrase is because it's so weird, and people we evolved as a society, and we're like, let's not say weird stuff like that.
It sounds both strangely innocent and strangely crass at the same time. It's like, this sounds like it was in the 20s, but it also sounds like this could be a horrible thing.
It also sounds like it's like in the next like rap music video.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lil Craw.
Little stuck in craw.
Man, I hope somebody gives us credit for that, because there will be a Lil Craw now. You watch.
Perfect. Yeah. That's it. And it started here on the Movie Wars podcast.
I actually did research. 75% of our audience are mumble rappers.
There we go.
Perfect.
That's helpful.
That's our demographic.
Well, you know, Seth has gotten on my good side when we are voluntarily covering hero movies outside of Batman, because that's the only one I care about. But James Gunn just released his trailer for the new Superman, and it was viral right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
I know Matthew Blevins wouldn't mind me quoting him, but Matthew Blevins said the funniest thing about this. He said, I sent it to him and said, "What do you think about this?" He says, "It looks like a Sprint ad from the mid-aughts."
He's not wrong.
I've texted him twice since then saying I randomly thought about that text and laughed.
Right.
Just out of nowhere. Like I was on the phone at work and I thought about Sprint ad from the mid-aughts and just started laughing. And he is not wrong.
No.
Like you said, we're not here to talk about it, but that's why we're doing it. But the trailer looks horrible. It looks like dog shit.
Looks so bad.
Well, the dog is the best part of it.
Yeah. And people have been memeing the shit out of that dog part.
Yeah.
It's like super Lassie. I love it.
Oh my god. Yeah. I understand why everyone's like, it's canon. He's been in the comics since the 50s. He's had 13 appearances across comics and cartoons since the 1950s. Mm. I don't know why we're putting him in this movie. It just feels so weird.
It's like Homeward Bound, but with Superman. I'm cool with it. To me, the trailer was just so generic. Like at the end of it, I was like, oh, okay, so that's a movie.
Yeah. Well, and Superman is kind of a generic hero because of, he's one of the oldest. And, he's kind of a generic superhero. He wears red and blue. And it's like, but every deviation lately has been, how can we make him not generic?
Oh my gosh. So because after watching the trailer, I remember thinking like, well, I wonder if they're going to do anything different. This seems so generic. And then in rewatching Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, I was like, oh, okay, so maybe a little generic would help here.
Okay. Are you about to get in the history? Because I have some shit to say about the history
I'll kick
first.
us off. Yeah, we were actually going to start a new franchise in February. I think we were looking at a bunch, and then Seth texted me, is like, hey, did you see the new trailer? He's like, we should do the Snyder Trilogy. Yeah. Because it was timely, and we're trying to get more timely here. Usually I'm a contrarian, so someone's like, hey, we should do something about this movie because this thing's out. It's like, let's go to the 1940s and find some unknown movie.
Let's go watch the racist Batman series.
Yes, let's do that instead. Let's be the antithesis of what's in culture. But I have wanted to kind of get into it because, not just because of the Superman trailer, but the Snyder stuff. It's funny because I don't keep up with the culture of movies. I just care about the movies. I don't care about celebrities. I obsess over the movies. Yeah. I typically miss out on this stuff, and I find out about it much later. Like when the Snyder Trilogy came out, I started seeing all these comments and stuff. I was like, why is everybody so upset about this? Yeah. And then
Granted, when Man of Steel came out, people were actually, for the most part, obviously you had the dissenters, but at the time, Man of Steel was considered to be an incredible movie.
You sound like you run a country. Obviously, we have the dissenters, but we don't talk about them.
I am the king of Snyderville.
We just let the military take care of those people.
Yeah.
The Earl of Snyderdon.
I remember seeing Man of Steel in theaters and absolutely loving it. Yeah. And actually really enjoying because the big part was the controversial ending. That's where the dissenters. Yeah. And
the color correction and the tone of it, which I'll get into in a second. But keep going.
But I remember for that movie really liking that was the end.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest. In our rewatching of it, I think I let the whole love for superhero movies my first roll around get me more with Man of Steel, because when I watched it this time, I still liked it.
Yeah.
But there are some things that and then going in, I was a lot more aware with them when we get into our next episode when we talk about Batman vs Superman. But Man of Steel, if it was just by itself,
it holds up. It's a very solid movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You have to remember the time period it came out. The year before, we had just wrapped up the Dark Knight trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises, and the first Avengers movie had come out, both in the same year or literally within months of each other. At the time, people, when they saw they were going to do a Superman movie, literally everybody online was like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if we had like a Christopher Nolan type Superman movie? Like, that is literally what people were begging for. And so when he signed on to produce / executive produce, and then Zack Snyder came on to direct it, people were excited because they thought they were going to get something different from Marvel and something a little more in the grounded tone of the Dark Knight trilogy. So, I mean, that's kind of where this whole thing started, was people hoping that the Superman series was going to have a very similar tone to the Dark Knight.
And it's interesting when I think about like the Snyderverse, because I feel like, and I don't know, maybe one day you'll Seth, you can teach. I don't know if you teach this. I don't know. I'll
teach this at community college.
I think someone should teach a unit of a film class and entitle it "What Went Wrong with the Snyderverse."
I can tell you exactly what went wrong with the Snyderverse.
Because I think there's a lot of good things about the movies that we saw from it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of things that it makes sense now in the future to be like, oh, that's why the movies ended up not finishing before they. For me, I think the biggest problem was, and you said it yourself, like right from the minute they started Man of Steel, it was leading. There was always like, we're gonna make our version of the Avengers.
Yeah.
And so there was always this long drawn out, chronicle of movies we're gonna make. And somehow, in thinking of the big picture, they forgot the kind of important thing, in my opinion, which is each movie needs to be good.
Sure.
And I know if we were to look at Marvel nowadays, we could say that they've also forgotten that. But before the first Avengers, every single Marvel movie stood by itself.
Yeah.
And then the first Avengers movie capitalized on that. But I still think Man of Steel at the most, maybe that one could stand by itself.
Right.
But I mean, well, we'll get into the next movie in the next episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Here's the thing, just to give a little overview of the movies we're about to go over. We're not going to go through the entire DCEU. We're not going to go over Wonder Woman or Aquaman or Suicide Squad or any of those other movies. We just wanted to focus on these. But when you look at the broader picture of what Warner Brothers and DC did with the DCEU, I've actually looked at the box office numbers, and every movie that Zack Snyder had a direct hand in working on killed at the box office. Man of Steel, I think, was above half $1 billion at the box office.
I think it was 800.
BVS made even more. Legitimately, Wonder Woman made a shit ton of money. Then you had Justice League, which still did well in the box office, but was nowhere near as well received. And then that's when things started to go downhill, because you saw Zack Snyder have to check out. He had a child who committed suicide.
Yeah.
And so he had to leave the franchise at the time. And Warner Brothers started nitpicking every single thing that every director did, because Batman versus Superman was so divisive. I can't personally say it was not well received, because there is an entire half of the fan base that raves, especially over the Ultimate Edition. But overall, kind of like The Last Jedi, it very much split the entire fandom as far as people who loved it and people who hated it, and there really isn't much middle ground. But once you see Warner Brothers really getting their fingers in the tone of the universe, which mostly started with Suicide Squad, that's when you really see the box office numbers continuously go down.
Yeah. They're almost, I don't know if they knew they were doing this at the time when they decided to do this. Obviously, we're focused on Man of Steel today, but we're also introducing this whole franchise that we're covering. But, they really stepped in it without, I think, knowing. Because not only, so you have what you just talked about with the background of the film, that was divisive. And then never has it been, because of the internet, never has canonization also been such a hot topic. So they're purposely stumbling into this, like not only the stuff you talked about with the background, but like then you have the comic book warriors and and again, I don't have a problem with them, but I just disclaimer, I love Batman, but that's the only superhero I care about. I am disregarding the comics for this. Not that I'm saying it's not important, but I will be approaching this as a film. So before you bitch at me about the canon, there are dozens of different comic book storylines that are out there.
So many different iterations.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this as a movie. You know a little more. I think you probably know more about the comics. I don't know shit about Superman.
I know
comics.
very little about any comics. I wasn't really into them growing up. I do enjoy superhero movies, but for me, because each comic storyline is its own thing, why can't the movies be their own thing?
Right.
We should treat the movies as their own version of the stories.
I think there's nothing wrong with looking at great comics and appreciating the great comic, but then looking at the movie adaptation of it and be like, it missed its mark.
Sure.
I mean, we in other things we do that with books all the time. We do that with, even movie. We've done it here with movie reboots. With, you know, when like it's hard to take something that people love so much.
Yeah.
And I just think it's unfair to that thing to give the same kind of reverence to a movie based off of it. Like, because I think that's the part of the challenge for the director is. And not just the director, but everyone in the filmmaking process. Yeah. Even from the actors who are playing the individual characters, is you want to do something in a way where it pays homage or does well for the original comic version. But then there's also the whole creativity part of it where you want to add your own creative liberty to this. And Zack Snyder did a lot of creative liberties with this whole series.
But remember, he is also trying to build on people who may not be into the comics.
Yes.
He's trying to get them into the fan base.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
I almost... when it's done well, or at least when it's the way that I enjoy, I like it when you, if a movie is adapting something else and then it takes its own creative liberties, it makes it kind of more fun, like a little.
I agree.
Like a little twist. It's like I really like cover songs as long as they're good and have like a good electric guitar solo at some point in it.
Yeah.
But,
I feel that. So, sometimes the cover of a song is what becomes more famous.
Yeah. So,
like "Hurt" by Johnny Cash is a Nine Inch Nails cover, and everyone knows the Johnny Cash version.
Yep.
Or
I know.
Literally every hymn in the Protestant.
Yeah.
Because it started off as a drinking song at a bar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
In case anyone listens to the Movie Wars podcast for church history trivia, there you go.
Yeah. Wasn't one of the greatest hymn writers blind?
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. He's ripping off drunkards. They didn't even know he's blind. They wouldn't accuse him.
He was the first Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah. Surely the blind guy wasn't ripping off our drinking songs for the church, was he? That's a movie in and of itself.
I thought I was just at a restaurant. I didn't know it was at a bar.
That's your next movie, dude.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's a hilarious idea, actually.
There we go.
Some like medieval. Yeah. So let's get into our experiences. I'll kick off because, I really like Batman a lot. And I've read some of the comics, but outside of that, MCU, I'm just gonna be honest, it doesn't get me excited. And I don't hate that other people hate it. Yeah. There's just so much of it out in the world. There's just so many, and every time I see they're making another property, I'm like, it's over.
Yeah.
It's like it was good when it was good, and so my thing with Superman is in these movies, we'll get into it more later, but these movies actually confuse me even worse because my biggest problem with Superman is knowing what his limitations are. And you say kryptonite, that's like the obvious one, but it's like, when does his punch hurt the most? It's like, because he's invincible in a lot of ways. I never, in these movies, like every Superman movie I've seen, is like, well, I don't really know what his limitations are. Batman's very easy because he's a man. He's not an alien. He's a man with gadgets.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to kind of, demarcate where he is not supernatural.
Yeah.
But with Superman...
except he's got the supernatural plot armor. Like when you're watching him in the next movie...
it was literal armor, but we'll get to that next movie.
That's
true. In every iteration of Batman, because that's the biggest thing too. Like, he doesn't have any superpowers. I was like, he has the writers section of the room. That's his superpower. He cannot...
And money.
Yeah. But when they start getting in the fights, especially towards the end of Man of Steel, like and they're destroying $2 trillion worth of property damage.
Which I will say, in preparation for this, even before we fully decided, I knew we were going to do it eventually. I went through for the first time the entire animated series of Superman.
Oh, good for you.
Same shit, dude. They
Breaking
are destroying
buildings.
the city left and right,
That's
and then
crazy.
suddenly next episode it's all back together. So I mean, this is kind
hilarious.
of standard for Superman.
If you're if you're a construction worker, if you're an architect, Metropolis is the place to move.
Yeah.
Literally.
You will always have work.
Yes.
Then why wasn't the song "Break Stuff" by Limp Bizkit? It should have been on the soundtrack.
I think every movie everywhere should have a Limp Bizkit song.
Absolutely, big fan. But
that's the reel that will make everyone hate this podcast. So
Yeah.
quickly.
yeah, I
no,
mean,
it should have the Deftones.
the Deftones, the Limp Bizkits, the Limp Bizkits,
Limp the Biscuits.
Limp the Biscuits.
Limp Biscuits and gravy.
Yeah. So when I actually saw this pretty close to the time it came out, and I'll be honest, I just kind of went into it negatively just because I don't like Superman.
Fair.
I was excited when I heard "Seasons" by Chris Cornell on the soundtrack. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. That was kind of cool, but by and large, like I like Henry Cavill. I like what he does here. I like the things they're aiming at. I do like this dark approach. Obviously, though, it was like, well, Nolan's involved, Goyer's involved. It's like, but this isn't a Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's always been weird for me to see his name on it and his involvement, but it's like he has such a high standard.
Yeah.
And it's like, was this okay with him? Like, did he just kind of inspire him to do this stuff? So that was always a big point of contention for me. It's like, well, I know it's not a... And
he loves these movies.
He does?
He literally, every time he's talked about Zack Snyder in these movies, he's been very full of praise. He and Zack Snyder are very close friends. Actually, when Justice League came out, which we are covering, he literally told Zack, do not go see this movie. You will be crushed by what they did to your baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if this might be cynical, but does he love those movies because he loves Zack Snyder and he's a good friend, and just in the way I would support either of you?
Well,
or
remember,
or is it because he's a good movie director and he looks at these and like, this is a good work of art?
Yeah.
Fast and the Furious is his favorite series. So, I mean, take that as you will.
He does claim Tokyo Drift is the best. But
Yeah.
we talk about that at the Quarter Mile podcast.
It's kind of like how, you read stories about Michelin star chefs that love McDonald's.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's that disparate. Like, I know that sounds like I'm shitting on this movie a lot, but when you compare this to a Nolan, like, it's not the same level of like the standard.
I mean, I genuinely think Man of Steel could easily fit in the Nolan universe.
Really?
I absolutely do. So I see. This is where I know you two are going to start ganging up on me. I'm going to disagree.
I'm going to use your Nolan love against you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you've been spared for the most part. You haven't been the ire. We've been pretty positive for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think Man of Steel would fit.
I try to keep it positive. I also try to give space when I respectfully disagree. Only in that I think this movie would fit in the actual universe with Batman from the Nolanverse, and the color scheme and that version of Metropolis, absolutely. But like I feel like if it was in the same universe and we were comparing the overall plots of the Dark Knight trilogy versus even just the Man of Steel, we'd be like, oh, this one kind of fell short.
Yeah.
What do you mean by we, Kimosabi?
Whoa.
We, the general public of people that want.
See, that's the thing. Is again,
know.
especially when Man of Steel came out, the vast majority of people were totally on board with it, and I personally don't really see any issues story wise. So feel free to tell me your grievances.
Yeah.
Okay.
But especially just concerning Man of Steel, like I think it is everything it needed to be to bring in a new version of Superman. Because when you look at the 5 Superman movies we had before this, we had the 4 Christopher Reeves movies, and then we had Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. And having, for the first time, very recently, seen the first Superman movie and Superman Returns, I don't like the tone that they take because there is nothing for me to give a shit about Superman.
Right.
I don't care about Clark Kent. I don't care about Superman because there is no emotion behind that character. He's just I'm gonna beat everyone and I'm cool. Here we go. I'll reverse time by turning the world backwards.
That was so stupid.
It's in the first movie. And that's the one everyone's like, this is the greatest Superman movie ever. I'm like, they're horrible. As far as like, there's a lot of good I could pull out of both them and the Brandon Routh versions, but overall, the tone of them, I just don't think made me care about the person the movie is named after.
TV and animated Superman's where it's at. That's all.
I haven't seen any of the live action TV shows, but I've heard great things about them. But as far as the animated series go, I think they make Brandon Routh's and Christopher Reeve's version look terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this, on the other hand, the reason I like it so much is because, at least for like the first I don't know, hour and 45 minutes of the movie, you are focused on Clark's struggle with trying to figure out how to be a human, but also who's an alien. He's trying to figure out his place in this crazy world where he knows the moment people know what he can do, he's going to get looked at strange. So I think this is the first time we've really seen in film form, I'm not going to include TV in this statement, but in film form, that we've actually seen the character of Clark Kent really struggle with the emotions of being a person that has all these powers.
Yeah.
I like 80% agree.
Okay.
I'll
and like I said, film only, not including TV, because I know because I've been told that the live action shows really do capture that struggle really well.
But of course they have more space to
exactly
build the character. And here was the thing here were the couple things that were interesting to me about Man of Steel as it pertains to Superman. First of all, right from the very beginning, Snyder's very clear that this is going to be a different version of Superman than we've seen. Even in the flashback sequence when they say this was the most useless and weird thing to me, but like, I mean, it added to the character. He's like, this is the first natural born child of that is a authentically Snyder thing.
100%.
Like, and it also later in the movie and for the rest of the series has no use whatsoever.
But, I disagree with that.
But
that was the reason he could absorb the codex.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But okay, so right from the bat, when we are seeing Clark, we're seeing a more human version of Superman. In that at the end, of course, the big one's when he has to make the choice to kill. In every other version of Superman, he always finds a way to save the day and not kill at the same time. Right at the beginning, when he's coming back from the Arctic, at one point he steals people's clothing. Yeah. Superman doesn't steal. This version does, and it's kind of letting you know that this is a flawed hero, which is like and actually with all the heroes, they eventually kind of show. And then there's the scene, of course, when he's struggling with his anger. That the guy at the bar who pours the drink on him and he could punch him out, but he doesn't, but he still goes and like impales the truck on the thing. And that's the movie's way of showing you like, okay, he didn't kill him, but he does have a bit of a temper and he did. And whereas any other version of Superman would have figured out a way to like fix the issue with his words and make a lesson out of it.
Citizen, you really shouldn't be consuming this much alcohol.
So they frequently have humanized in this movie his alienness. Yeah. And but the one thing but the whole movie is all about the Superman side of Superman. Whereas in every other telling of Superman, you have the Clark Kent, him growing up as a human and dealing with human things, but then you also have his superhero real version of himself. And this movie was interesting to me because they humanized Superman more while completely neglecting his human side. Like, we didn't even see him dawn on the geeky Clarkness, and he made it look cooler than it usually does.
I mean, that's just Henry Cavill.
Right. Like,
he's a bit too sexy. He's kind of too sexy.
But he is also the nerd in real life. So, I mean,
he is actually a video game addict.
Yeah, he almost missed this audition. I'm sure it's one of your randos. He almost missed this audition because he was playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually didn't know that. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. It's so great.
So it was interesting to me because this Superman lacked a few of the things that make Superman, but I don't feel like it necessarily took away from the first movie. Now, and later one, in this Batman vs. Superman 100% becomes a plot device, and we can talk about that next week. Because
see, I think I disagree with you because I feel like the majority of the movie focuses on him as Clark. It's him coming to terms with the fact that there are two versions of himself.
But you never see his human side. You're always seeing him as Clark dealing with supernatural stuff.
I totally disagree with that.
I mean,
the whole thing about how he has the ability to do certain things, but has to choose to hide it because that's what his dad has said is the best thing for him because the world wouldn't be ready to accept it. Like, again, it's he hasn't figured out who he is yet. So there is no geeky Clark yet. That's what happens in BVS, where you actually do see a lot more of Clark in the whole office circumstances. But in this, it's again something we have never seen on film before, and that's him actually having to struggle with figuring out who is my public persona, Clark Kent, and who am I actually, Superman.
See, I mean, different opinions are different opinions. I feel like this movie, all we see is him coming to terms with his alien side, which is fine, and that was the thrust of the movie. But what was interesting to me was in the first time in movie, or maybe even Superman in general, maybe people may know instances where I'm wrong. And for the first time,
they'll correct us.
For the first time ever, we're seeing Superman with a much more human light. I mean, originally Superman doesn't kill people.
Yeah.
In this one, that is the crux of what he has to do to save the greater good.
Yeah.
And he is the archetype of the superheroes. Like, everything can be, this day can be saved, there can be no casualties, and everybody can win because Superman's able to save it. This movie, it was all about, there are consequences, there are costs, he had to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
And he had to save the day by killing someone. And then at the end, you get to see the turmoil he had from killing for someone.
Yeah.
But I would argue they were maybe setting this up. If the Snyderverse got its entirety,
Snyder had a plan from the beginning.
It would have led to the Injustice storyline, and it would have led to Superman becoming a villain that Batman had to stop.
Yeah, which I do feel like is worth mentioning. Snyder did have a fully drawn out plan from the very beginning as far as the movies he wanted to make. He left all of the extras and spin-offs up to Warner Brothers. But basically, he said, my core movies are going to be Man of Steel, BVS, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Ben Affleck's solo Batman movie that never got made, Aquaman, Man of Steel 2, and 2 more Justice League movies that was going to hit Injustice, and then a final movie that was going to, according to reports, have a Return of the King level battle for Earth against Darkseid, and then was going to finish with a Flashpoint movie that would let Warner Brothers do whatever they wanted with the universe after that. So he had a plan. And like I said, when you look at the box office numbers, it's clear that once Warner Brothers started putting their fingers in everything, that's when everything started to go down and they lost the plan that he had.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah.
We need a hero.
Yeah. I need a hero.
I know that you have friends out there on Reddit talking about how this isn't canon, that nothing is canon.
I am banned from the Snyder Cut subreddit. So.
Oh yeah, you are. I remember that. I'm not gonna go in there. I just don't even want to.
It's a shit show.
I don't want to deal with it. That's the thing. I get so afraid when we do these movies because I know that like I'm stepping into it. Like last time we covered a Star Wars movie because I don't like Star Wars, but I tried to be as nice as possible. I wanted to quit podcasting. I was like, fuck these people. I can't.
Which one did you cover?
The Fallen. No. We did start a Star Trek reboot versus I can't remember. It was
so
episode 7.
Okay, so
Yeah,
like
so.
the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a shit show.
I'm sure.
Like I said Star Trek, I know I did, but I was just waiting and like somebody, it's Trek, and I was like, I did say it, but I'm also like Filipino American. Okay, give me a fucking break. All right, I have an aneurysm. No, but if you have a friend that's spending too much time on Reddit, get them to take a break, listen to this podcast, calm their soul. This podcast can become canon to you.
There you go.
There we go.
That's right.
Imagine Superman is destroying Nashville, and we're here just talking about it.
That's right. That's right. Oh, the Batman building just got blown up.
What?
Yeah, that's funny. The Batman
It's a
building.
bitter rivalry.
Yeah. We have a Batman building here. It's the AT&T building.
Google it. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's fine. It somehow has become Nashville's identity.
Yeah. It's so weird.
It's our Empire State Building.
Yeah. The questions.
The questions.
Kevin Costner got pretty far into that tornado before he got sucked up, huh?
Yeah, for real though.
Good Lord. That was like an F3, and he was basically standing in the tornado for at least 5 seconds. Like, he should have been off the ground before it was even that close to him.
He should have just said, hey, Superman, can you go get the dog?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one sequence is probably my biggest gripe with the movie is I think that whole thing could have been handled way better. Like, I get they wanted to kill him off to give Superman a little bit more to, like, ground him to Earth, but yeah, I just don't think that whole scene was done as well as it could have been.
Yeah.
I think they could have done it better. I don't quite know how, but you're right. It just I get what they were trying to do, and they just jumped right into it, killed him off, and as a viewer, you're just like, okay, I guess that. I mean, but as a as a Superman fan, I know that part of Superman's develop is the death of his father. I was kind of
not
bummed,
in the animated
though.
series. His parents are both alive in the animated series.
True,
Yeah.
but I was kind of bummed that they didn't. Because one of the, for lack of a better word, beautiful parts of Clark's dad's passing is it's usually by some kind of like heart attack or something that's outside of Superman's control.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for him to overcome, because part of the appeal to Superman fans is when Superman has to deal with things that he can't solve. So like, anytime Kryptonite's in, that's a big plot device.
Yeah.
But also anytime there's sickness, that's like, and human error, that's a sickness, that's a problem. Anytime people he loves, I mean, that's the big thing with the Injustice one. He goes crazy once Lois dies in it. And then another one people forget about often, about like magic, really messes with him.
Yeah.
So it's like so it's always fun to see. That's how you humanize Superman a little bit, by putting him up against things that his powers can't fix.
Yeah, which, to compare, I do appreciate what Zack Snyder was trying to do with this scene, where he knew he could have saved him, and his struggle was respecting his father's wishes by not doing the thing he knew he could have done.
How long do you think Martha how long did it take her to get over the fact that her son could have just ran in there and saved her husband?
She never seemed too bothered by it.
She was like,
I mean, in the movie they talk about it, like in the scene before he goes. Well, it's when she's in the destroyed house. They kind of do touch on it, and I think she kind of understood like what his purpose in not letting Clark save him was. But again, that's probably my biggest gripe.
That was
with
a big
movie.
mom moment there. She realized there's what I want to say and what I need to say to my child.
Yeah.
That tornado looked horrible. I'm sorry. The CGI was bad. It made the Twister CGI look like fucking incredible. And yeah, and he was standing way too far into that tornado. He should have been sucked up. Like, that kind of tornado would have sucked you up like well before it got to that point. But he's just standing there with the debris, just like, that's gonna kill me. It's like,
it looked cool. It did look cool, and I get it as far as like the visual thing. But no, I agree with you. That scene is it's the one thing I'm like.
I do with the Snyder movies. I do sometimes get tired of the pressure to make everything look like a visual masterpiece, and the later you get the visions and the dreams, and you get everything's supposed to be like an allegory. Yeah. Sometimes I like watching things and just like, oh, there's a man being sucked up by a tornado.
Yeah. Sure, but then again, you're watching a superhero movie directly after the Avengers had come out. Like, there had to be some visual spectacle to kind of let the beginning of the DCEU live up to that. So I mean, there was definitely pressure on both sides. It definitely could have been better, but I also don't think it was shit. Like, it was all right, but definitely not the best.
I had a lot of stupid comedian thoughts during that scene. I was like, what if his dad died because he was like Superman used his vision to like laser off a melanoma and like and accidentally like pierced his dad's brain or something? It's like damn it. I knew we should have just gone to the dermatologist. I'm Superman. I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
Dad was all like, we don't have insurance, son. It's either this or I die.
You better use that laser vision. By the way, the gas is off. Can you cook what's in the skillet there? Just heat it up, son.
I'm tired of wearing glasses. Can you do LASIX on me?
I don't want those damn doctors. They track you for the government.
Yeah, where I'm from, that's exactly how we would use. If like I adopted an alien superhero in accident, I'd be using his superpowers to fuck with people. I'd be like, hey, Jimmy the neighbor, why don't you go burn the hair off his cat? So he's just naked. Yeah. Next question. I don't care how advanced the Kryptonians are. Who the fuck architected the designs of these UFOs? They are like just all over. First of all, they kind of look like someone watched Prometheus. Yeah. They got that, and the suits have the look.
Prometheus came out after this.
Oh, really? That's
Prometheus was 2014.
That's crazy. They look like Prometheus. And then the UFOs are just like random and weird. Like, that doesn't look very aerodynamic.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a giant tooth just coming down.
They're for space. They're not supposed to be aerodynamic, you idiot.
I don't care.
Krypton brought to you by your neighborhood dentist.
They don't look very effective. Okay, you're right. Okay, that was dumb. They're for space, but still, even then, don't you need
you
some?
don't know how space flying
Yeah, I don't go to
works.
fucking space.
Yeah,
what, did you go to
space?
space?
How the vacuum of space works.
I don't know how space works.
I don't know. I had questions about them from the very beginning when they were like, instead of saying like, hey, we should all leave Krypton, it's about to blow up, they were like, hey, I'm gonna leave Krypton. And how weird was like them infusing the Codex with Clark and or Kal-El, and like it's like the whole time I'm just like, is this like the best way to do all of this?
Well, I mean, remember at that point you're dealing with the downfalls of that kind of governmental system.
Yeah,
is what he's trying to do when there's so much red tape that you can't even agree. Hey, we should leave this fucking rock.
Yeah,
like I get it. I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, it was fun to watch. It was the intro to the movie, but the whole time I'm like, yeah, they could all just like.
Also,
leave.
the first time on film that we've actually seen the origin of Superman.
Yeah.
So, because that wasn't really. I think it was very briefly in the very first one, but nothing in depth where you, again, to me, it just gives you more of an idea of where he came from and why he's so split, because he very clearly has the two pieces of him pulling himself apart.
Well, to me, when I watched it, it was setting up the fact that they were really going to focus more on the alien side of Superman.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I mean, and then, Zod coming back. I mean, I mean, that Zod is a very alien villain for Superman versus Lex Luthor, who's a very human.
Which I think, honestly, it was a good idea to start with Zod and have the little nods to LexCorp and Wayne Tech, because you see during the big fight scenes, there's a couple of those pieces put together. But no, I do think it was solid to start with an alien villain to give him a reason to decide, do I give a shit about Earth, or am I just gonna do the thing? Like, am I gonna go back with these people because they're my blood?
Yeah,
I thought Zod was a great villain. I thought
Michael Shannon was so good.
I love him. Any time that, I mean, that big old fight at the end between the two of them, that was like, if I hadn't already been caring about the movie, that would have been like, all right, this is what I'm ready to watch.
Yeah, back to the UFO design.
My bad.
No, it's all good. That's why the questions are here. It generates discussion, right? Yeah. We're digging under rocks. It's great. I did want to come back to one more thing. I do think this just hit me, by the way. The UFOs do look like they're designed by someone that lives on a planet where they're no longer having sex. They are. They're no longer having sex. They're making these babies in tubes. They're no longer. They're basically not allowed to have sex anymore.
Yeah,
you can tell this.
Go ahead.
This guy was taking his frustration out on designing these UFOs. That's why they're all elongated. He's like, oh, what I would do to this thing.
It's like car designs after everyone stopped doing acid and started doing cocaine.
Yeah.
How many people were having a good time on that spaceship when the big old laser was drilling the Earth? And going up and down and up and down. We need more soldiers to send. They're all preoccupied. It's not, and that's it.
Yeah, that is now how they get off.
Yeah.
Finally, we can set off the world engine. Not yours, Jimmy. The actual one. Put your pants back on and press the button.
Yeah.
I do think the biggest disadvantage coming to even just the world builder ships, I think the biggest disadvantage this movie had just going into it was having 4 years of Marvel previous to it.
Yeah.
Because with Iron Man and even Iron Man 2 and Captain America and Thor, like, they were really able to start small scale and build into the Avengers levels threat, which I think is one reason why post Endgame everything just feels ridiculous, because somehow they're trying to top Endgame. With this, they had to top Avengers before they could even put the Justice League together. Like, they had to make a spectacle.
And I think that might have been where they might have gone wrong, because if they had gone into it knowing that that's where they wanted to go, but really focusing on, like, we're not, we're on level 1 of the series right now, so we need to keep it on level. Everything about the entire, like, all the Snyderverse movies is setting up for the Justice League, setting up for, and it's instead of keeping up with Jones, they're keeping up with Marvel. And I think that might have been, and I get it, because, like, fans are thinking it and saying it, and it's all around you when you're making these movies. Like, oh, is it going to be as good as the Avengers, or is it going to be, as a comedian, when you say, like, I have a show next week, and they're like, oh, is it at Zany's? It's like,
oh, okay, yeah.
It's like,
no, it's in a brewery in the back room.
But when you do those brewery shows, you're like, this is going to be the best damn brewery show in this back room.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe one day it'll set me up for the Zany's show or whatever. But like, so I feel like everything about these movies always went back to, like, we're going to make an amazing masterpiece in 4 movies.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the big differences between Snyder and the MCU is Snyder, like, bit off a lot from the source material. Like, even though I don't know the source material, what I did in research, he borrowed, especially as he progresses towards Justice League with the next few films. I say a few, the next 2 films, including Justice, whatever.
Yeah,
it's hard to say, but he basically picked a lot of different scenarios from the comic books, and I think MCU, they kept it pretty simplistic comparatively.
Yeah,
I think they were more like, we're going to do a lot of these. Let's not try to like overdo the source material. Let's not try to please everyone. We're going to like kind of cherry pick.
I'm not sure why he did that. That just, to me, if you're making a movie, I don't know if like,
because he's a comic stan. He absolutely adores the comics. And so I'm sure going into it, he was like, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And yeah, I can see how again, I don't really know as much, especially about the Superman and DC comics overall, but I can see how for people who love those, watching pieces get pulled from all over the place and get put into what I felt like, just as a movie watcher, was a reasonably cohesive story. I could see how you'd be like, wait, why is this here and this is here and this is here? Like, I could see how that would be confusing.
Because he altered them to fit together. So he's both taking and like breaking them down. And if you really do care about the canon, I'm sure it pissed you off.
At that point, it almost seems like it'd be easier and better to either pick one or pick, a couple. I mean, he picked like 15 at some point.
Yeah.
So or this is a nice thing that people should do more often in movies. Make something new. Like you give Superman a new threat that he hasn't had to deal with yet. Or later or with the Justice League or something like
inflation.
that. Yeah, right. So what do you do when the cost of living? You have no powers that help you with the cost of living.
Superman versus J.P. Morgan.
Superman versus the Federal Reserve.
What if the whole second movie was just about like focused on the lawsuit the government was? Superman attorney at law.
Instead of being a journalist. Last question. Superman may have saved humanity, but what the fuck are they coming back to besides $2 trillion worth of property damage? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to work? I don't know if my family's alive. Thanks, Superman.
I mean, the Avengers literally destroyed half of Manhattan.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, so this was a huge gripe, which I am, spoiler alert, I very much appreciate the fact that in the directly next movie 2 years later, they hardcore start dealing with the reality of the damage that was caused physically. The MCU didn't do it until I think 2016 or 17 with Civil War. So they had 2 Avengers movies and every other solo movie before they even thought about approaching, hey, we kind of literally destroyed New York City.
Yeah.
Here, it's par for the course as far as the animated series goes. Like I said, they are knocking down buildings left and right, and he'll catch it, get everyone out, and then just let it collapse.
Yeah.
Like, he would have been horrible to have on 9/11.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's par for the course of superhero movies, and I feel like they dealt with it pretty quickly as far as like series like this.
Yeah, I mean, in the next movie, they have scenes where Batman's there and trying to save someone that doesn't. I mean, it is cool to see that the destruction comes to play in later plot devices, and also just in comic books in general. That is usually a good start to another story. Is you read the next comic, you watch the next episode, you do the next whatever, see the next movie, and it starts with, as the damage is happening, someone gets hurt, and then someone else turns to a villain because of that. And that really this was the first time the world saw Superman, so them seeing all that damage, there was the 2 kinds of people: the people that would end up like worshiping him and seeing him as the hero because he saved us from the aliens, but then there's other people like, I had a house and children.
I had one more payment on that car.
It was one thing I noticed that was kind of interesting because it goes along with the Superman that he's creating in this movie. Is usually Superman is all about saving people first and then fighting the bad guy.
Yeah.
And at the beginning we see him do some heroics, with the ship and a couple of the school bus when he was a kid.
Yeah.
But during that fight, man, like, it's kick Zod's ass and save people on the side.
But also remember, this is technically his first actual outing as Superman.
Absolutely. So, but it's interesting that they really, and that's the thing that comes into play in all the movies is and it goes back to they're just painting a darker pictures of superheroes.
Yeah.
Like at this point, all we've ever seen is the bright, happy, peppy, always good guys, superheroes. Now we're seeing the dark sides of them. no pun intended. 'Cause he was but we're seeing the issues. We're seeing them as flawed heroes. It eventually leads into series like The Boys and Invincible, and like
I was about to say Snyder got stomped on so the boys could run.
The Dark Knight kind of showed that we had interest in kind of the Dark Knight series showed that we had an interest in kind of more emo superheroes a little bit. The Snyderverse kind of helped us get there, and now we actually it's kind of interesting. I feel like we're actually on the other end of the pendulum. We've been getting tired of that. We've also survived a pandemic. We also have enough dark people in our world running our governments and doing our things. We're ready for a bit more light stuff. So I really think that this next Superman movie, we're not going to see him as dark. We're not going to see him as
James Gunn has been very clear about that.
He's gonna be more classic Superman. But it's just interesting to when you're watching this movie that you're reminded of this was the start of us kind of as a culture, people that like superhero movies, kind of wanting to see them struggle. Kind of want to see them kind of want to see them get pissed at the drunk guy and throw this big old semi truck into a power line. Regardless of the ramifications it has for the rest of the small town and the power outages that were bound to happen and the amount of money that was going to cost everyone.
Just send him to the DMV.
Right.
Superman goes to the DMV. Randos. This is crazy. Henry Cavill actually auditioned for Superman Returns, like before it was even called that, so early, and he got rejected. He was devastated because he loves Superman. But then eventually he was elated and ecstatic when he got this one. But it's kind of crazy that
he almost missed the audition.
And he almost missed the audition because he was playing World of Warcraft.
That's funny.
I didn't know that, but I did know that he was like excited to be Geralt because he loves Witcher. Apparently,
he's just the king of getting the perfect role for him and then having studios fuck it out of him.
And then he's doing Warhammer.
But he's a producer on that, so he has a little bit more creative control on that one.
Can you guys picture him as the Brandon Routh version of Superman? Like, I feel like he did such a better job at this one. And I mean, as an actor, maybe he could do that one, but I don't think I wouldn't. I can't really picture it as much.
Same. No, that movie. Bryan Singer directed it. He tried hard to balance that happy-go-lucky Superman with a little bit of darkness, like the scene where Kevin Spacey comes back as Lex Luthor and the dog is eating the other dog, random shit like that to try to add some darkness to it. But I just tonally did not work.
Superman Returns might be my least favorite Superman.
It felt
like a chick flick with Superman. It was like a romantic movie. Like Superman made by Lifetime. Like it felt like.
Legitimately.
Good thing he made his bones here.
Right.
Ben Affleck was originally going to direct this. So before he was even cast as Batman, Zack Snyder was hired. So it says Zack Snyder was hired to. Sorry, I'm going to cut this out. I just totally broke my own rule there.
What was your rule?
I don't read. I don't read off the screen. I talk. I talk to you guys. I don't read. That's like a big rule for me. But I totally forgot what I was saying. Fuck, I'm going to have to cut
this is a safe space for reading if you want. But we also like talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, five, whatever. Yeah, Zack Snyder, before he directed this, Ben Affleck was given the chance to direct this. So that's before he was actually cast as Batman and V versus. So he turned it down because he had never made a movie with so many visual effects shots.
That's fair.
That's what he said because he had done. Fair. But he was riding hot off of Argo, won Best Picture for Argo. But that's a very organic movie. That movie's like probably got very limited VFX.
Can you imagine if he was directing and he had to at one point come to Henry Cavill like, so I get what you're going through. Back when we did Daredevil, this is something I had to that is known as one of the worst superhero movies.
I watched it for the first time a couple years ago. Definitely not great, but nowhere near as bad as people said it was.
Yeah,
it had some solid moments.
Which one?
Daredevil with Ben Affleck. and Jennifer Garner as Elektra.
It was fine.
Yeah,
it was. It was fun. It was. I think sometimes the superhero movies are just meant to be fun and exciting. Yeah, and if you think too hard, you're like, well, my brain starts hurting.
Yeah, and it was being compared to the Spider-Man movies and the Blade movies and the X-Men movies at the time. So I mean, it definitely didn't live up to any of those, but it was all right.
And that was a transition period, like. Like the superhero genre was changing rapidly.
Yeah.
And Electro was very formative in my early years.
I haven't watched that in a long time.
Yeah.
I probably won't ever watch it again.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not worth a rewatch, but it was fun the one time.
Sure. The first cut of this was 3.5 hours long, so the runtime's 143 minutes. But originally, this was going to be like the other ones. It was going to be a lot longer, 3.5 hours.
I'm not surprised.
I love seeing the extra content of these movies, but I also feel like releasing the extra version at times is a bit lazy.
I mean, again, so people say that with Snyder a lot, especially after the Rebel Moon movies have come out and with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Here is what happens, okay? He goes and he gives the studio the script. And he's like, this is the movie I want to make. And they're like, cool. Then he goes and makes that movie. And then the studio comes in and they're like, hey, you got to not make that movie. You've got to make this version of that movie. And then it almost, other than Man of Steel, I don't know what an extended cut of Man of Steel would look like. And I don't even know if it would be any good. Yeah. There's probably a reason he's never released an extended cut. That being said, with both BVS and with his version of Justice League and both versions of, or both parts of Rebel Moon, his version, which his definitive version is usually the extended cut, is significantly better than what the studio makes him put out. So I don't think it's lazy. I think he's literally bowing to the overlords at the studios, doing what they're telling him to do. They realize it's not great. He's like, well, let's try my version out. And then everyone loves it more. Right. So I don't think that's his fault. Yeah. He just gets fucked into making a shorter movie than he wants to. And then they're like, oh, we'll put all that stuff back. And then they're like, okay, this was actually a good movie.
And then they get to make twice as much money for releasing the same movie.
Yeah. It's probably just footage of the horny Kryptons making UFOs. Yeah. Making sexually ambiguous UFOs. That's all it is. It's just an hour and a half of that.
Yeah. Or maybe it's more of his first day at the Daily Planet at the end of the movie. It's like shows him, getting his first story.
And a 20-minute sex scene of Russell Crowe making Clark.
Yeah. And then
I forgot Russell Crowe was in that movie.
I love that he's in that movie.
Every time I see him, I think of Gladiator. And every role, it's like, I feel like it's just Gladiator doing it.
Apparently, whenever he goes to Italy, he's just treated like actual royalty there. Because
that's amazing.
It's so funny.
As well he should.
Yeah. That's funny. All I think about is the Crow.
Only Wicked Prayer.
Only Wicked Prayer. Henry Cavill said the most difficult scene to shoot was the shirtless scene coming out of the water when he goes out and does the oil tanker because he refused to do steroids. Yeah. Which is kind of disappointing because he looks really great without steroids. I'm like, dear God, genetics rule.
Fuck you.
Yeah, great, nice genes there.
Been nice for the rest of us if we learned he was on steroids.
Yeah, I kind of needed him to be on steroids for my own personal. But he wouldn't take performance-enhancing drugs, but he also refused to let them touch him up with VFX. Yeah. So it was really difficult because he knew that they wanted him to look bigger, they wanted him to look more jacked, but he wouldn't do either. So it was there was a lot of tension. So and I think there was some insecurity about coming out in that scene out of the water, knowing that probably they wanted him to look.
Yeah. Well, he also refused to shave his chest.
Yep, that was a big deal.
Yeah, they wanted him to shave his chest, and he was like, "No, Superman is Clark Kent, who is a human. Why is he gonna look like a figurine of a superhero? He's a fucking man. Let him have hair in his chest."
Yeah, especially if he's hanging out with all the oil tanker guys out there and the fishermen. And
doesn't want to get made fun of for being a,
smooth-chested boy.
I don't know a lot of lobstermen shaving their chest. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. But how interesting is that, though? If Henry Cavill is really self-conscious about a scene because of his outward appearance, then, next time you're self-conscious, just remember, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of
We
pissed.
all struggle.
Yeah, even that specimen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last rando here. This is kind of crazy, and I would love to hear kind of your takes on this because I am not I'm a big when I talk about sports, I like uniforms. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I love those all black whatever. Yeah. But Snyder wanted the red trunks, and it actually wasn't until I read this rando that I realized I was like, oh, he didn't have red trunks on.
Which was a point of contention at the time.
It was, and the problem was they did 1,500 designs with the red trunks, and he said they just never landed on one that worked.
Yeah.
I like it without the red trunks.
Same.
I've always thought the red trunks were dumb. I love it when people make fun of that about Superman, that he wears his underwear on the outside. If Superman was real and he came flying through Nashville after I thanked him for saving us, I would turn to you and make fun of his red underwear too.
Yeah. I mean, same. Especially with how his suit ends up being basically Kryptonian Under Armour. Yeah. No, I think it makes sense to not have the trunks. And I think it's kind of a dumb decision for James Gunn to put him back on.
Yeah.
Maybe they were maybe the trunks was when, back in other versions of Superman, his mom helps him make his costume. And he gets but he gets the suit from Krypton. So maybe it's really Kryptonians, because they don't have sex, they also don't wear underwear
Yeah.
as well. And so there was no need for the red trunks, and it would have been a design flaw.
He's just always wearing red underwear underneath the suit.
It's permanently attached to him.
Yeah. He's Ken dolls.
He's like, this is my underwear.
He actually has 2 flaws. Krypton, what is it?
Kryptonite?
Kryptonite. God, I can't even say it. He has 2 flaws: kryptonite and the fact that he's permanently in red underwear.
Yeah.
That's actually his.
Yep.
That's actually his second flaw. How much? This is probably a really stupid observation, but my 3-year-old is obsessed. On YouTube, I've been showing him the old Adam West Batmans.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
Because
It's my favorite.
he has this floaty toy.
For those who want to know, I have Cesar Romero's face tattooed on the side of my arm as the Joker. So yes.
They are
cool.
really good. Like they're
they're
fun,
so good.
they're hilarious, and they feel like the 70s. Like even though it's 66, like a lot, like there's
Yeah.
disco.
Such fun humor, though. It's just
Yeah.
a good show.
Well, that's what I think ended up being the problem with Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher's was they tried to update the corniness, but didn't lean 100% into it because
Yeah.
they still wanted to make it kind of serious.
Yeah.
And that just ruined it for me. You go back to the 60s, and that's where it was just so much fun.
Has she seen the episode yet with like the shark repellent? That's my favorite.
That's
Oh,
the
not
movie.
yet.
Yeah.
That was the movie.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one either. I don't think.
Oh, I think it might be on Max. It's
Okay.
really good.
I'll check it
it's,
out.
Batman's got all the gadgets, and whenever they can't figure out how to use one of his gadgets, they just give him a pod that says whatever he's trying to stop repellent.
Yeah.
There was a time where a shark was jumping at him.
That's
He
amazing.
pulled out from his utility belt a jar that just said shark repellent. and
That's
he sprayed
incredible.
it,
Yeah.
And
Now
that's
I
how
have
got
to
out of that
watch it.
situation.
That's where my favorite Batman quote comes from. Some days you can't get rid of a bomb.
Wow. That's
It's
amazing.
so
You meet a lot of people who they say to this day, even some younger people I know think Adam West is still the best Batman. So
Oh, absolutely. Technically, he's the most comic accurate. He's the right height and weight for standardized comic Batman.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But going back to my original point, I was actually working on the production sheet for the show while my son was, I was just like, I need 5 minutes to work on this. And I was watching it while I was like writing about this. And I look over and I'm like noticing like his trunks are high waisted.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. Every
Yeah.
pants were just like you wore your belt.
Yeah.
Your belt line was above your belly button back
Yeah.
then. And I'm like, I guess today again, this could be a dumb observation. But to meet today's standards, we don't really do high waisted. I
Yeah.
guess it's coming back for women a little bit. They do some of the 90s. But in general, so is it going to look more like a Speedo now because we don't do high waisted
kind
trunks?
of.
I mean, so it wouldn't look
Yeah.
good.
No, it doesn't look
it'll
good.
Be,
Yeah.
It'll be weird, but I think when people see it, hopefully it'll kind of remind them of like old school Superman that's more like upbeat and bubbly and fun and not dark. And so they're using, in theory, they're using the older, outdated outfit to remind you of like a simpler Superman. But
Maybe.
I think
I'd
it'll
still
still
look
look
dumb.
stupid.
I mean, in the
stupid,
trailer, it
dumb.
looks dumb as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring out the Super Speedo. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just needs a what the banana hammock, is that what
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Super sausage.
Just a nice old jock strap.
Yeah. Or a cup. He needs a cup.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to hear one more fun little
I think
rando?
Yes, please.
I think
Yes.
I know this rando.
They had to digitally alter the size of Henry Cavill's dick.
Really?
Because it was so bulgy in the costume.
Really?
They were just like, yeah, we got to tone that down.
That's amazing.
I remember. Here's a rando about that rando. I remember when I learned that fact. It was because I was on a plane with my mom, flying somewhere, probably to Colorado at the time, probably to my grandfather's funeral. If we want to get real dark with this.
Oh, wow.
And she's reading it in an article in one of those magazines. So my mother just looks at me, hey, have you ever thought of Henry Cavill's dick? Because you're about to. And she shares that fact with me. And so now I always.
Wow.
Amazing.
Thanks, Mama Drew.
Yeah.
There we go.
Damn.
I guess he and Willem Dafoe have the same problem.
Yeah. Henry Cavill continues to make me feel
Inadequate in every way.
subhuman. Yeah.
What if it was like, at times I felt awkward because my dick was so big?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually the 1500 designs. They just couldn't figure out how to
Trump's
harness the
just
power.
insinuated his dick.
They were like, we don't want to bring light to that. So.
I'm never covering him again. I'm sick of his bullshit.
We got 3 more movies.
Oh my
y'all.
God. Just tone it down. Which is funny because every time I see an interview with him, he's so lovable because
Yeah.
he's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
such a nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we destroy $2 trillion worth of buildings?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Shall we fly?
Yeah.
Shall we super?
Shall we make some cock-shaped ships?
Yes. Yes. Let's war. Let's I was trying to think. Let's justice. So the categories are if it's positive, This is amazing. if you like it, positive, affirmative. Snyder, barely know her.
Okay.
And then this is actually Movie Wars tradition. This predates very immature things that we did in the early rendition. And you're gonna love this, Seth Rogen fan. If you don't like it, if it's bad, super bad.
There we go.
Yeah, it's super bad. So let's go. Top bill cast: Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon.
Fuck yeah. They're all perfect in their roles. I do remember there being controversy over Amy Adams not having dark hair, like the traditional Lois Lane does. I think she very much pulled off her own version of Lois.
I think Amy Adams as an actress was my favorite part for both movies. I was like, she stands out more than, because I feel like she took this. Okay, no offense, Seth. Not that you'll take this offensive. I just
Where are we going with this?
I don't want you to punch me on Snyder's behalf. But in both movies, and probably in the Justice League movies when I rewatch them, one of my biggest issues is the dialogue and the lack of, I don't know if it's a lack of acting, but lack of just given to act. And Amy Adams, I felt like pulled it off better than anybody else did.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel that way at all, but okay. But yeah, no, I think she was amazing. I think Michael Shannon is one of the most terrifying villains I've seen in a superhero movie to date. He rivals Thanos as far as just sheer holy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, Snyder barely know her on both of these.
Snyder barely know her.
Yeah, I'll give Snyder barely know her. On this, especially Henry Cavill and Amy Adams and
all three of them were perfect.
He did good too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
What do you think?
Is this gonna be so? I love what Henry Cavill did here. I'll say this: I don't like Superman as a hero.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what version. But the moments where he was trying to become accessible and giving us we were peeking into the human aspect. I love that. I think he did great. And actually, I've become a fan of him since. I love Geralt, and I think as a person, he seems really interesting. And I like what he does here. I had a really hard time. I am going to go Snyder barely know her here. I love Michael Shannon, but he's done a lot of great independent movies that I love. Jeff Nichols, the guy that directed Mud with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
He did a movie called Take Shelter.
Okay.
It was one of Jessica Chastain's first movies.
Nice.
And great independent movie, and I love him. And it was really hard for me at first to kind of see him in a big budget movie.
Fair.
Because I had loved him, and it took me a minute, but yeah, I eventually really warmed up to what he did here.
Have you seen Premium Rush?
I have not.
Oh.
Is that a good one?
That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a bike courier, and Michael Shannon is a dirty cop.
Really?
And he's like, he's trying to track down something that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is trying to transport. It's so good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. I should check that out.
That was my introduction to Michael Shannon, actually.
Really?
Before Man of Steel came out. Yeah.
That's awesome. He's a great actor. He
Absolutely.
And then the only one I had a little trouble with, Amy Adams is actually a top 5 actress for me.
Yeah.
I love her, especially in the David O. Russell films. I think she was more serviceable than great here, but still good enough to give it a good mark. So Snyder barely know her.
I mean, for me, I think it really comes down to, I don't think there's usually much to the character of Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And I feel like she actually brought some depth to that character.
Yeah. Yeah, usually she definitely airs more damsel in distress, whereas here she's real strong.
Yeah.
She's like a military journalist.
She plays both really well, because whenever she is in danger, she doesn't. It's only because it's an outrageous level of danger that she's in that it's never like, oh, help me, I'm stuck somewhere. It's like, no, I'm about to fall off a building.
She I feel like the character of Lois Lane is never really a damsel in distress. She's always like a outspoken reporter trying to get to the bottom of the news, like really brave. But then she finds herself
in quagmires,
captured by an alien about to be incinerated.
Giggity.
And, there's only so much you can do without your red underwear. So.
It's true. It's true. You need your red underwear attached to you at all times. All right, 1-0. Here we go. Supporting cast: Russell Crowe as Jor-El, Diane Lane, Martha Kent, and then I'm going down to people we would know. I love this. Harry Lennox as General Swanwick. That guy's like he's always a hard-ass military guy in every movie he's in. Richard Schiff as Dr. Emil Hamilton, and then going down the list farther, Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent, and Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White.
Yeah, I honestly think this is one of the best supporting cast. Lawrence Fishburne was fucking great.
I would have loved to see more of him. Maybe that was part of the hour and a half that wasn't.
See, that's where I love him in
taken
BVS. You see so much more of him in BVS, and I think he's fantastic. Kevin Costner, while I slightly disagree with some of the decisions that were made about the character by Snyder, I do think Kevin Costner killed that role. Like trying to be the earthly version of Jor-El, where you're sitting there saying, here's how to be a human. Don't overdo it. Don't make people scared of who you are. And then he had the other side of Russell Crowe, who I also thought killed it, doing his thing where he's like, no, you have to embrace the extraordinary part of yourself.
Yeah.
So,
which is that was another decision that they made, because usually Jonathan and Jor-El are forming two different parts of Clark that end up working together. There's the humans, but they were both kind of just encouraging him to be the hero and whatever.
Yeah. Snyder barely know her for me.
All right. It's fun to say it.
I'll give her a Snyder barely know her. Like I said, I felt like the actors did well. There are times when I did think like the script was a little dry. Not so much the action watching it. That part was, but like when, I thought this frequently. Anytime the characters were talking, I was like, I'm a little bored.
Yeah.
like just throughout both these movies.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah. So you also went Snyder?
Yes.
Okay. I actually went Superbad.
Interesting.
And it's hard for me because I love Kevin Costner, but I really love Lawrence Fishburne. I'm not like a giant Russell Crowe fan, but I feel like all three of those actors, I got pretty like regular performances here, and I just wanted more. The only one to me that over delivered was Diane Lane.
I thought she was so good.
She gets even better in the next one.
Oh my God, yes.
She shows a lot here, but considering how great, and I'm very deep on Lawrence Fishburne. Like I loved him as Larry Fishburne when he was in Apocalypse Now. That's how much I love him. He was only like 15 in that movie. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I've seen him in Boys in the Hood and Matrix. Like I've just seen so much dynamic.
John Wick.
Even more dynamic here.
Yeah.
I just don't think. And I don't necessarily blame him, but I do think there was more that could have been done there.
I mean, he is kind of the straight edge version of JJJ from the Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I do realize I am mixing my interpretation of him with both movies right now because he is more in Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
And he really wasn't. I don't feel like he.
I mean, there just wasn't much for him to do story-wise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's his fault. I think he did the best that he could with how little he was in the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think he did a bad job at all.
Yeah. It's just three fantastic actors that did good jobs, but I kind of want, you know how I am though. I always want like some of that supporting cast to really like pop. And I just felt like it's pretty, besides Diane Lane, the rest, but
there were no villains from The Crow, that's for sure.
I know. Where's Dennis Hopper? Yeah. But you guys both, so it's 2-0. Here we go. Writing, and this is a lot of writing going on. David S. Goyer, screenplay. David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan for the story. It's so weird to say that out loud.
Yeah.
And then Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster for creating Superman.
So here's the thing that you kind of see with this, and I've always said this about Man of Steel. Man of Steel is the least Zack Snyder movie. You could definitely see his influence on delivery and cinematography and a lot of pieces, but there's almost no slow motion in this movie, which is obviously very much a Snyder signature.
Right.
I personally love it. If I'm going to go see a Snyder movie, that's what I expect. Now, as far as the writing is concerned, I personally love the story. I understand what you're saying. There are times where like the dialogue might drag a little bit, but those are also supposed to be like slower moments to really hone in on the human part of the movie. So I'm going to say Snyder barely know her. I know I'm probably going to be alone with this, but that's my opinion.
I think this is how I know I struggle with people pleasing, because I know none of these people are gonna hear my vote, and it doesn't and no one who's listening to the podcast is gonna like turn their car into traffic when I say this, but I still struggle saying it. I'm gonna give it a Superbad. I loved the action. I realized when I watched this, I love the characters and the overall story.
Yeah.
But then, like when I'm actually watching it and taking in the overall story, there were just too many times where I was like, I mean, I guess that's a decision. I felt like I said that a lot.
Didn't David S. Goyer do Shitty of Angels? Which one? Which Crow did he do?
Oh, Goyer did. No, Goyer. Did he? I can't remember.
I
There
think
was
he
a
might
big.
have, yeah.
There was
Was
a big.
it 2 or 3 that he did?
Oh, City of Angels.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So he did Shitty Avengers.
That's right,
Well-
City of Angels. Sorry.
Well, there we go. Now I know why I don't like it.
Yeah.
'Cause that was the only. Pretty sure
Yeah.
that was the only Crow movie that I just actively did not enjoy.
Yeah.
The reboot I didn't love, but I still found a little bit of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also went super bad here, and the thing is that I like the dialogue. The most I like the writing here is the dialogue between Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, and Cavill. Like those families.
Yeah.
That's where the writing actually shines, which is kind of weird because that's not necessarily Snyder's sweet spot.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't do any writing.
I know,
so.
but I just mean in his movies in general.
Yeah.
Like, but you're right. That's a good point. But what really killed this category for me were the lines that were written for, I can't even say her name correctly, Feora Ol,
Oh yeah.
the one that's Zod's right hand.
Oh,
woman,
yeah.
The shit she says.
Give me some examples. Let's hear it.
I don't remember it verbatim. I just remember it taking me out of the movie. Like the thing, like every line she had, I was like,
Yeah.
that is cheesy as fuck. Like,
Interesting.
I don't mind in action movies like this for the cheesy dialogue.
Right.
For whatever reason, it's like when you hear certain things in music for a type of song that's supposed to fit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
When I watch like superhero action movies, if they ever put an interpretation of Captain Cold in a DC Comics book and he's not doing like cold puns the entire time,
Yeah.
I would be annoyed.
yeah.
Captain Cold.
You mean Mr. Freeze?
No, different villain. Captain Cold
Oh.
is in The Flash.
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Freeze is the one from Batman.
I'm probably least familiar with the Flash.
And then
so that makes
Sub-Zero.
sense.
And then
From
Dr.
Mortal
Thaw.
Kombat, yeah.
It's almost like they ran out of ideas.
Then there's the ice cream Pokemon. So.
Yeah. Every movie they're like, all right, who's going to be really cold in this
Yeah.
movie? Whose
Yeah.
superpower is making shit cold?
I forgot about her lines, but while I will not say they were good, I will say it was fun watching her just be a archetype lieutenant type bad
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I just like whoop, whoop, evacuated me out of the movie. I was like, all right, because what sucks is like because I'm really into the dynamic between Superman or Clark and his parents. Like I
Yeah.
actually think they nailed that.
Yeah.
But there was in the whole last part of the movie, there was just moments where I'm like, oh, it just felt like that they were running out of time with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's 2-1. Okay, cool. Directing Zack Snyder.
I mean, he had so many different obstacles directly in front of him as far as beginning a franchise to compete with the Avengers, which already had 5 movies out, maybe even 6 by the time this one came out. I don't remember if Iron Man 3 had come out yet. He had that to contend with. He had the fact that he was drastically changing the tone of a fantastical superhero that people had 5 movies and the animated series and tons of comics that hit every different tone, but he had the challenge of changing the film tone of Superman. I think he did an incredible job with everything that he was handed. I'm gonna give it a Snyder barely know her.
Yeah.
You know what? I feel like if he's a category for later movies, I may change my answer. But for this movie alone, I'll give him a Snyder barely know her.
Yeah.
I agree with. I mean, he was starting something fresh.
Yeah.
And it really. I mean, I remember seeing it in theaters, and it got us hyped for what was coming up.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
He took Superman in a different light completely.
Yeah.
And so. I feel like he fell off the thing later, but for right now, if we just look at Man of Steel, Snyder barely know her.
Yeah, zacked it up. I actually also went Snyder barely know her here. One thing I put in my notes was because I went into this thinking about 300 because that. What's funny is we've seen enough of him now to know that that's not all he does.
Yeah.
But that was so signature. You and I were talking about it in the car on the way over. That was a cultural moment.
Yeah.
That was like Boondock Saints and some of the like. It was like holy shit.
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about 300. People
Yeah.
were seeing it 50 times in theaters.
Yeah.
But that like it was really easy for me to think like that's going to be like what he does here. But I saw some of the coloration things like, and it was really reserved for outdoor shots. But I think by and large, his ability to kind of tame that here actually worked for the movie because it wasn't distracting and it made me pay more attention to the story because with 300 it was just so visually different that I was just like so saturated.
Right.
And Xerxes was just so everything was so over the top. I actually think he tamed some of that here, and it worked. So actually, for that reason, I gave him a Snyder barely nowhere here.
There we go.
Yeah, so look at me. I am capable of confidence. It is 3-1 here. We're on the cusp here.
Woo!
We're on the cusp.
Dawn of justice.
Dawn of justice. Dawn of the red underwear. What's in front of us? Cinematography, production design, sound, editing, costumes, etc.
Yeah, I have no complaints. I thought the vibe of this movie, again, keeping in mind culturally what was going on with superhero movies at the time, what people were literally demanding. And then once BVS hit, we're like, we never wanted that. I'm like, you literally asked for this. But I don't know. Other than the tornado, I think the visual effects were off the charts. I think the fucking last couple of battle scenes, just ripping Metropolis apart, was so much fun to watch. Yeah, I think the set design was really good. I think having a solid dynamic between Smallville and Metropolis, like, I think he did a really good job there all the way around. Yeah, I have no complaints. So Snyder barely nowhere.
What do you think? It's just funny every time.
Yeah, I agree. With editing, this one, I guess we got what we got. We got the final product. It wasn't like one where it's like, well, actually, there's a 12-hour one you can watch later if you want. If you want to just call in sick for work tomorrow, you can watch the real version of it. I love to watch it. Like, looking at it, it was aesthetically incredible. We hadn't gotten a lot of the slow motion yet, which that sometimes distracts me a little bit. I'm like, you want a less than 4-hour movie?
Yeah.
Maybe put it at regular time. But one thing we hadn't talked about that was also really good was the soundtrack. It really fits.
I'm seeing Hans Zimmer in less than a month, and I cannot wait to hear the Man of Steel stuff.
And they put it. There was when he was learning how to fly, that whole scene. So Snyder really nowhere.
I thought you would think that was funny. You know,
begrudgingly.
And you're winning.
By Justice League, I will definitely be like, this is hilarious.
By the way, one thing that you said that reminded me of a thought I had is, like, one negative thing that came out from just the whole drama with the Snyder cuts. Now people online are always asking for the blank cut of a movie. Have you noticed this? Like, not with like Egger's movies. No one's like, give me the Egger cut because he gets his way. But with like big budget movies now, we're like, give me the blank cut. Whoever directed, I'm like, that's not a thing.
Well, the only other valid one is David Ayer has a separate cut of Suicide Squad. Because what happened was, they put out that first trailer with Bohemian Rhapsody, and then Warner Brothers was like, oh, that did so well. Let's hire that company to re-edit the movie.
Yeah.
Because apparently his version of Suicide Squad, which the day before the movie came out, he tweeted and then deleted his tweet saying, the movie you will see tomorrow is not the movie I made.
Wow.
And then, so basically his tone was vastly closer to Man of Steel, BVS, and Snyder Cut. But because they brought in this trailer editing company to re-edit and reshoot the movie, it basically just turned into a completely paceless movie.
Yeah.
Which was nothing but quippy, shitty jokes. It's okay.
It was your stereotypical jokes, action.
Yeah. They were trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was just
that's not what Suicide Squad is.
No. And if we had, I'm sure one day when David Ayer just leaks his cut, I'm sure we'll have a better taste in our mouth after that one. But, yeah, that's the only legitimate one outside of Snyder. That's the only legitimate give me the Ayer cut.
I don't know. I think we should get in the habit of releasing the good cuts the first time.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Calling it.
Yeah. It sounds like something you would yell at a butcher.
Yeah.
You know? Give me the prime rib cut! Give me the good shit!
Give me the USDA prime!
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this does sound a little conspiracy theory, but I wouldn't be surprised if it really is just a marketing tactic where they're like, we're gonna put out a less good abbreviated version. People are gonna get pissed off and post about it online, which will help people see our stuff.
Yeah,
and then a little while later, we're gonna release a different version, get people re-excited again. And make twice, if not 3 times as much.
Yeah, because that's what defines great art, as being basically persuaded by the online community. Great artists don't go, oh, okay, I'm listening. You know, a great artist is like, can you imagine Lars von Trier changing something in his movie because he read a Reddit comment?
Listen, all I'm saying is, for the first time around, the Fast and Furious people heard put cars in space.
Yeah.
And they put cars in space by the 9th movie. So.
But everybody gets there. They put Jason Voorhees in space.
Yeah.
All right. I wouldn't be surprised if they put like The Shining in space, or like it's like, well, we're out of ideas. Put them in space.
Time travels after space.
You didn't give your score yet.
Oh yeah, I went super bad here. Sorry. Again, there are some things I love, and almost everything I loved about this movie was the family interaction. I really gravitated towards that because I do think, for the first time ever, as someone that's very impartial to Superman, I actually, for the first time, like, oh wow, like I feel like I love the way the outdoor films. I love the cornfields, like the farm scenes are really well done.
Yeah. You should totally watch Smallville, the TV show that has 10 seasons about
Superman. Oh, yeah.
I am obsessed, and it is a lot about the
I'll dive right in.
But tell me, other than cock ships and a tornado, what did you not like visually?
The tornado looked really bad to me. The ships looked really bad to me.
Outside of those, what did you hate about the visuals?
I know you love the fight scenes. I did not. Again, I know this is a Superman problem, not necessarily, but I still have all the material I have experienced with Superman. I don't know the rules. Like even Tenet, like we talk about, that was our big criticism of other people was they explained the rules in the first 15 minutes. But every time I see a big Superman brawl, and that brawl is so extensive, like, yeah, some of the damage is cool, but, like, I still don't understand, like, when he's doing the most damage. Like, what are his limitations here?
Do you want me to be a nerd and answer that for you?
Please.
Well, please do, because, again, I don't care about comics.
So the big thing about Superman is with normal humans, with people, everyday physical contact, he had to learn how to like barely touch to barely touch.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I don't know if you got to this in the Justice League series yet, but one of the best scenes in the entire animated series is, you do get to see Darkseid, who was eventually going to be the villain for the Snyderverse. He comes to Earth. And Superman realizes that this guy's just as tough as him, and he has this amazing monologue you could look online for if you want. You don't have to. It's not. And where he's just like, I always feel like I live in a world where everyone's made out of paper, but you're not. I can finally cut loose on you. Yeah. And so then he finally just beats the crap out of him. That's how he wins the fight. But the big thing is as he's learning to control his powers on Earth, part of his development was learning how to. So anytime he's fighting a Kryptonian, he can go big, punch. Go crazy anytime he's fighting a monster. But then you see him when he handles like the human villains, he learns to tone it back a little bit. Something that's kind of funny since I referenced Smallville, when it's all about him growing into Superman, it's all about him growing into his high school years. When he has his first girlfriend, he's afraid to have sex with her because he doesn't know if he can, when he climaxes, if he can control his power. And then a couple seasons later, he starts dating her again.
Yeah, super sperm.
Yeah, she's wondering. They're talking about it, and she's like, "Isn't that an issue?" And then he said, like, there was a part where, like, he went on to, like, into the Fortress of Solitude and learned a bunch of Kryptonian stuff. And he's like, part of my education was I learned how to control myself.
So dirty.
Oh my God! There's a moment in How I Met Your Mother where they find out Barney takes performance-enhancing pills for sex, and he gives them to Marshall, and he goes, "Just be careful when you finish it. It has a kickback like a cannon."
Oh my God!
That's what that reminds me of.
Oh my God!
So there's your. I don't want to say it's a good answer to the issue you have, but it is an answer.
Well, first of all, I think which Jay and Silent Bob. There's a Jay and Silent Bob movie where they have a whole conversation about Superman climaxing, and like they talk about like blow her right out the back or something. They say something like that. I think it might be Mallrats. I'll have to look
probably back. What inspired the Smallville storyline.
Yeah. That is so cool. And if that was in the movie, actually it would have like elevated it for me. Because here's the thing. Does it look cool? Kind of. Like it's not that I haven't seen a scene as cool or less cool. Like it's pretty on par for action, but I don't know how much damage he's doing. I don't know how much damage Zod is doing. I just like who's winning
because they're equally matched.
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
But I don't feel like I have that understanding. Like I just don't. I don't feel like they've done a good job telling me the level of power.
See, here's where I think it all really does come to a head, and maybe this will change your opinion. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're equally matched, and Clark doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah.
And that's when Zod has that moment where he's just like, oh, no. If you're going to beat me, you are going to kill me.
Yeah.
That's the only way this ends.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think that whole fight, Superman is pulling back. And that's why it might be a little hard to understand what his rules are, is because he doesn't even know what his rules are.
Yeah.
He's not trying to kill Zod, and so he's only trying to put him down. He's not trying to absolutely destroy him.
Yeah.
And so it's in that moment where he genuinely finds out, no, this isn't even my limit. When he breaks Zod's neck, he's just finding out the beginning of where he can truly go. And so I understand where your complaint comes from, but I think it all comes from being a full-out origin movie of Superman.
Okay.
I also think them being evenly matched, it gets us to the end of the fight, which it wasn't solved by one physically besting another. It was solved. You had Zod, who had nothing to lose and nothing to live for, and just wanted to I'm either gonna die or I'm gonna kill you. But even if you were gonna kill, he had like that. He was done. He was already defeated, kind of. So he was just and then so the ending of the fight wasn't really a win for Superman either, because he had to choose to finally they got himself in a lot where Zod was like, I'm gonna either kill these people or you're gonna have to kill me, because he was at this point he was done. He was not in a good place emotionally.
I need a Mortal Kombat health meters.
And so
fatality. Like if that would have helped me.
So
I think they were both at halfway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was when he snapped his neck. I think that the reason they made them to look evenly matched, so that last scene could be so impactful.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also see where you're saying though, where it doesn't look like there's any.
I just want to know who's like, because that's a great fight. Like, there's always a great moment, and like it's cliche, but like the guy who's gonna win, the hero we want to win, is down and out and bloodied. But here with Superman, it's like, well, I don't know who's like more damaged right now. Maybe it's because I am thinking about it like a video game.
If we really want to get nitpicky too, how is a farm boy from Kansas standing toe to toe with like the military leader who's got like all this tactic and training? Like, what did Superman have that led him to prepare for that? Except for maybe the fact that he had more control over his powers in that moment.
Yeah, there's that, but also 1v1, like none of that strategy comes into play. It literally is just who's gonna beat the shit out of the other better.
Yeah.
So I think even if you were just like a drunk brawler and had those powers, you would be able to fight someone pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whenever I get superpowers, and if I figure out like a MMA fighter also has superpowers, I'm still gonna steer clear from them.
Yeah, fair.
Maybe I'm just I'm too trivial, because like I think about like what kind of superpower I'd have is like, as long as I don't ever have to drive again.
Yeah.
Right.
I would be happy. So what is that superpower? Like I can just
teleportation, flying,
I can afford a butler. That's my superpower. If I just never so I'm just not cut out for this world.
There's also an Uber app that would be great for your.
If it was free all the time. How about an Uber app without surge pricing?
Yeah.
That's my superpower. Just a discount. That's all I want.
Yeah.
It is 4-1 here. We are loving this.
Yeah.
We are loving this.
We're barely knowing this.
Barely knowing this. Oh.
Snyder up.
All right. What are your categories?
This really works here. How good are these bad guys, eh?
I love them.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Michael Shannon kicks it out of the park with his performance, but I know your complaint is with the woman, which is very sexist of you. Yeah. That's your only complaint is with the one woman.
After I said Amy Adams is a badass and I love her.
Yeah, but we know you're a sexist piece of shit.
I know.
Besides being the only one of us that's married.
Yeah.
But
don't you know that's how you get women? You be sexist and they're carnally attracted.
Well, I married my maid, so.
There we go.
There we go.
You better keep that in and show it to her. But I don't know. I like them. I like the way that they're all interacting, especially when they all come out and get him and get Lois before we even get to see him interact with Zod. I think they did a good job. I enjoyed them, so I'm going to give it a Snyder barely know her.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Zod is a fantastic villain for Superman. And if they were already wanting to be different, so choosing Lex Luthor as the first villain probably wasn't even on the table. They probably wanted to keep that. Yeah. And so if you're not going to do Lex, there are a lot of other options, but like Zod's probably a good
that's what they did with Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah,
with Batman Begins.
Yeah, so he was good. He was a good villain. So Snyder barely know her on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I go Snyder barely know her because of Michael Shannon.
Yeah.
And I stop there. I almost, because of whatever, I cannot Fiora It's so weird the way it's written and the way she said it, whatever she said.
And how about the fact that they didn't have her teammate who's like the black guy that's usually with her? Like it's usually the girl and the black guy that work for Zod, and there's all kinds of.
But I don't want to give it too much credit though. Outside of Shannon, I'm really not digging these. I'm not digging any of these.
So
Kryptonians.
you're like a squeak by. You're
I'm
like a 5.1 squeak by.
You literally barely know her.
And little. I barely.
Just the tip.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that's what we're
tipping. That's the tip. Yeah. But he's so good, and Michael Shannon to me, and maybe there's a little bit of bias in here because I just love him as an actor anyway.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys I'm just like I love watching him work. But
he also did a great job.
Yeah, he did, and I think this was honestly out of his range usually. Like he's never done something this outlandish, this forward. He's usually kind of a low key everyman. You know, he did Iceman, but even that he was still kind of calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
I really thought he took a big jump here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and did a great job.
This role impacted him so much he almost didn't come back for Flash because A, he thought he did what he needed to do in the first movie, and B, was kind of felt like it would be a little disrespectful to Zack Snyder. He literally went to Zack Snyder and asked him for permission to reprise the character in the Flash, and Zack was like, "Go for it."
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he clearly respected the character to the point that he put everything in it.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Take Shelter out there, I totally recommend Michael Shannon Take Shelter and all of Jeff Nichols' movies. He's from where I'm from, Arkansas. His brother is the lead singer of Lazar. What is it? What's the band? Lazar? Not Lazar.
Lizzo.
His brother is the lead singer of Lizzo. Lucero.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, his brother.
Next guess.
His brother. Yeah. You were close. Yeah. But Lucero is the band. They are very good, and he does a lot of the music for his brother's movies. But
nice.
Mud with Matthew McConaughey.
That was a great movie.
Fantastic. Jeff Nichols is a very Anyway, we're not talking about that right now. Well, it's 6-1. Can we get another negative in the column? God, I hope so.
6-1.
5-1. 5-1. I also can't do bad. Lucero, the Lucero,
Lizzo,
the Lizzo. Yeah, that was hilarious. Good lore is what this category is called.
I like that.
Good lore. I hope you like the scorecard because we got to stick with it for 4 episodes. But just kind of explaining this one, you stacking up and you got interpretations of the comics, you got all these other films. How does this stand? Like I know I said at the beginning, I'm not coming in this with comic knowledge, but obviously. You can't help but judge it by that. How does this just stack rank in the lore of just Superman movies, interpretations like that you've
start
seen?
Because I probably know about as much as you do, other than I've seen the animated series.
I'm gonna give it a Snyder barely newer because I feel like it did stack pretty well with the creative liberties he took were very small and inconsequential and nothing like completely like for example, when we talk the next movie, we're gonna have to address Doomsday and I don't that was the equivalent.
The turd with teeth.
Yeah, that was the equivalent to Deadpool and Wolverine with Ryan Reynolds. Like that was they were like, well, let's try to do everything Marvel related, including mess up a film. But in this one, I mean, there were very small things that were like, never been done before. We talked about earlier how he was like, this is the first baby that was made of natural. That I don't think came from anything lore wise. But when it comes to the overall story, when it comes to the villains, when it comes to Superman, I feel like it stuck pretty clear. He gets a little bit more wild in later movies. But this one, he's good.
He definitely picked and for people who say they don't exist, they definitely exist. He picked the darker toned Superman movies or comics as his kind of tone inspiration for these. And again, this is coming from someone who barely knows the comics, way more versed in the movie side of these things. But forgetting the comic lore, I love how detailed his own lore gets within all 3 of the movies, as we're going to see as we keep going. I think I'm not sure if the whole first time that, they've procreated in how many thousands of years is a comic accurate thing, but it feels like it's something that he might have pulled from one random version of the comic that he really liked. It was like, that's a cool detail. We'll throw that in there. Usually, and I mean, looking at Watchmen and even 300, which is based on a graphic novel, he tends to pull some very hardcore things from the comics that a lot of people probably wouldn't have touched on in the casual read. So I give it a Snyder barely knower.
I think it will be interesting as we go on. I think my problem will be not that it's like not completely comic accurate. My problem will be that like, why did you combine these 7 comics to create this?
Sure.
Or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. And what did you give it?
I gave her a Snyder. I gave her a Snyder barely knower.
Gave her a I actually gave it a Snyder barely knower too.
There we go.
Here's the reason. I think this is actually a cool category because I don't know the comic. So for me, the way to rate this category is, does it make me interested in the material, the IP more?
Yeah.
Yes. You know, and that's not to say I could go out and I've seen all the movies that have been made, but you know, I've probably read 2 comics, and that was probably when I was 7.
Yeah.
But if I was just looking at this movie standalone, does it say, hey, I would like to know more about Superman? Would you like to know more? Yes. This interpretation is more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And it makes me kind of want to go out and find more source material like it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's why I would give it a positive.
Hell yeah.
So
Cool.
6-1.
Woo!
It was a steal.
Hey!
Man of Steel.
Oh man, of steel.
How many unsubscribes did you just get from that last line?
Probably at least 20.
Yeah, a good chunk. Sorry. Probably some at the Snyder barely knower too.
Yeah.
That probably no. Actually, our old fans will love that. That was Drew 1.0. That was like his signature. But well, this was fun. We are going to continue doing the Snyder Trilogy. We got Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice coming up. Thank you for hanging out with us. Don't fly too hard. This is Kyle.
I'm Seth.
And I'm Drew.
Love y'all.
See ya.
Movie Wars.